Hey there, welcome to Broderos. Tonight, we've got hours of chilling horror stories combined with soothing rain sounds to help you relax and sleep. Before you drift off, leave a comment below and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe right away. If you end up not enjoying it, you can always take it back later. Get cozy and let the fear take over. I don't know why, but I felt it from the moment I woke up. The eyes. Always there, lingering, following, like a weight pressing against my back. It's strange, isn't it? How sometimes, in the quiet moments when we try to dismiss our fears, we end up facing them more directly. It's like there's something we can't escape, no matter how hard we try to outrun it. Like an invisible hand tightening its grip around your throat, suffocating you slowly until you realize it's already too late. I've always been a rational person. I've convinced myself, many times, that the mind plays tricks, especially in times of stress. But now, as I sit here, in my dimly lit apartment, I can't help but wonder if I'm losing it. I remember the first time I noticed him. It was just a glimpse. A fleeting shadow in the corner of my eye. I told myself it was nothing. But then, it happened again. And again. And again. I tried to ignore it. I went about my daily routine. Walked to the store. Came back. The same feeling. The same presence. It was always there, like an itch I couldn't scratch. Who is he? I don't know. I don't even know how long he's been watching me. It could be days. Or maybe longer. I've been trying to shake the feeling, to push it away, but the harder I try, the more vivid it becomes. I know it's not normal. It doesn't make sense. But the idea of someone, some stranger, just watching me without saying a word, it terrifies me. I know what you're thinking. You're paranoid. It's all in your head. But you haven't been where I am. You haven't felt the pulse of fear, slow and steady, building with every minute, every breath. Every time I turn a corner, I expect him to be there, lurking, waiting. Every knock on the door, every creak in the floor, every whisper of the wind, my mind twists them into something sinister. I've tried to talk to people. I've told my friends, my family. But their faces, blank. They don't see it. They don't feel it. So, I'm left with the weight of this invisible menace, pressing closer and closer until I can't breathe. Sometimes, I even wonder if I'm losing my mind. But then, there are moments when I catch him. Just standing there, watching. I've never been able to confront him. The fear stops me before I can even move. Instead, I freeze. My mind races with thoughts. Should I run? Should I scream? But no sound comes. Only the thudding of my heart, deafening in my ears. He's always there. I can't shake him. No matter what I do. The quiet rustle of leaves outside my window seems louder now. The hum of the refrigerator is suffocating. It's all closing in on me. This space, this apartment that I used to find comfort in, now feels like a cage. I can't escape. And I don't know what he wants. The light flickers above me, sending a shadow into the corner of the room. My stomach lurches. It's him again. I can feel it. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it through today. I don't know why I thought last night would be different. I should have known better, really. I should have known that nothing ever changes. I still let myself hope for a moment of peace, even when it was already clear that peace was long gone. The apartment is still the same. The same peeling paint on the walls, the creaky floorboards that groan when you step too heavily. The quiet hum of the refrigerator is a constant, but now it grates on me. Everything feels wrong. Even the air seems heavier, like it's thick with something I can't quite name. There's a subtle weight to it, pressing down on me, as if the space is shrinking inch by inch. I woke up again with that same feeling, like something was watching me, always just out of sight. It didn't matter that I turned every light on, checked every corner, or locked every door. I still couldn't shake the feeling. He was there. Just waiting. But waiting for what? I tried to go about my day like any normal person would. I grabbed a cup of coffee from the counter, the warm steam rising and swirling into the air, but it did little to ease the tension that coiled inside me. The mug felt too hot in my hands. My fingers twitched, and I nearly dropped it. I turned my head quickly to the window, half expecting to see him standing just outside, pressed against the glass, his face cold and unreadable. But the window was empty. Just the usual view of the street, quiet and mundane. But that wasn't enough to reassure me. No, I knew better. It's the silence that bothers me now. The complete, absolute stillness that hangs between every noise, every movement. My own breath seems too loud, like it echoes through the room. It's maddening, the way every little sound now feels like it carries an extra weight, like a warning. I can hear things now. Noises that weren't there before. The rustling of the blinds, the soft scrape of furniture against the floor, the faintest tap of footsteps that seem to fall on my own. Every time I stop, every time I freeze, I hear it. A shift. A sound. A movement. It's not me. It's him. I tried to leave this morning, to go to the store, maybe clear my head, but something stopped me. I don't know what it was, but I felt it. That pull, like an invisible hand reaching out and keeping me in place. The door felt heavier than it should, the hallway outside too long, too empty. I had to leave the building. I had to get out. So, I went back to my apartment and shut the door behind me, hoping to feel some semblance of security. But that's the thing, isn't it? There is no security. There is no escape. I spent the rest of the day trying to focus on something, anything. Reading a book, watching a movie, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. Anything to drown out the sound of the silence. But it was useless. It was everywhere. The sun set too quickly, and the night crept in on me, darker than usual. The shadows in my apartment seemed deeper tonight, stretching out in strange shapes, as if they were reaching for me. I tried to ignore it, to stay calm, but my eyes kept darting around the room, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't control. And then I heard it. The softest of taps. It was so quiet, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. But no, there it was again. A tap, followed by another and another, until it became a rhythm. Not random, not coincidental. A slow, deliberate tapping that echoed through the silence. My heart stopped. I held my breath. It was coming from the closet. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to confirm what I already knew. But I had to. I didn't have a choice. Slowly, my feet moved against my will, pulling me toward that closet door. My hand reached for the handle, trembling. I hesitated. Could I open it? Could I bear to see what was inside? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to do it. The door creaked as it swung open, and I half expected to find nothing, just clothes, shoes, a few forgotten things I hadn't bothered to organize. But there was something else. A shadow. It wasn't a trick of the light, nor was it my mind playing games. No. This shadow was different. It was solid. A figure, human-shaped, but not quite human. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, but it was there. And somehow, I knew deep down, I knew it was him. My throat went dry. My eyes were locked on the shadow, unwilling to look away. The room felt colder, the air pressing in from all sides. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My legs were frozen, rooted to the spot. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But the fear kept me in place, like a puppet on invisible strings. And then, in the silence that followed, I heard it. A whisper. Just a single word, barely audible. Hide. It wasn't my voice. It wasn't even a voice I recognized. I don't know how long I stood there, unable to move, my mind racing with fear and confusion. The whisper seemed to hang in the air, vibrating with some unseen energy before it faded into nothingness. The shadow remained, but it didn't advance. It didn't move at all. I backed away slowly, closing the closet door behind me with a trembling hand. But I knew he was still there. I could feel it. I could feel him watching me. I couldn't sleep that night. Not that it mattered, sleep hasn't been something I've been able to grasp for a while now. Every time I close my eyes, I feel the weight of him watching, lurking, always just beyond the edges of my sight. Even the shadows in my room seem darker, more suffocating, like they're closing in on me. I tried to convince myself that I'd imagined the whole thing. The whisper. The shadow in the closet. Maybe it was just a trick of my tired mind. My stress was getting to me, I told myself. Maybe I had eaten something strange, or maybe it was all just a dream. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. It wasn't just my mind playing tricks. I could feel him. I could feel the presence, the eyes that seemed to pierce through the walls, through my thoughts, into my very soul. Every sound, every rustle, every movement in the room seemed amplified now, more significant. Even the quietest noise felt like a scream, a threat, a warning. The hum of the refrigerator. The soft tapping of my own fingers against the coffee cup. The breath I could barely hear from my own chest. Everything was louder, more distinct, more dangerous. I had to do something. I had to confront this. I couldn't just sit here and let it consume me. But how? How could I face something I didn't even understand? How could I confront a presence that I couldn't see, but could feel in every fiber of my being? I sat on the edge of my bed, hands clenched tightly in my lap. I wanted to move, to act, but my body wouldn't listen. My legs were like lead, my arms heavy. My mind was a battlefield, swirling with conflicting thoughts. I can't be crazy. I can't. But then, the thought whispered in my ear again. What if I am? What if this whole thing is just a figment of my imagination? What if I finally snapped? I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts. I couldn't afford to doubt myself. Not now. Not when he was still out there. I thought about calling someone. Maybe a friend. Maybe a family member. But who would believe me? Who would understand what I was going through? No one would take me seriously. They'd think I was just paranoid, just another person caught in the web of their own fears. No one would believe me, not unless they saw it for themselves. I needed proof. I needed something to show me that I wasn't losing my mind. Something real. Something I could hold on to. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, fingers trembling as I scrolled through the screen. I searched for anything, any clue, any sign that this was happening to someone else. But there was nothing. No articles. No reports. No news stories about mysterious figures lurking in the shadows. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for, but I needed to see it. I needed to see someone else experiencing this, just to reassure myself that I wasn't alone. The phone screen flashed as a notification appeared. I glanced at it briefly, just a reminder, something trivial. But then, I froze. Something caught my eye. A message from an unknown number. The message was simple, just a few words, "I'm still here." My heart stopped. My fingers shook as I stared at the screen. No name. No number. Just those words. I looked around the room, my breath quickening. Was he here? Was he in the apartment, watching me even now? The air seemed to grow colder, as if a chill had settled over everything. My mind raced. How did he know? How did he know what I was thinking? How did he know where I was? My fingers hovered over the screen, but I didn't want to reply. I didn't want to invite more of this into my life. I didn't want to acknowledge it. But I couldn't stop myself. Slowly, I typed back, my hands moving with a mind of their own. "Who are you?" I hit send, and almost immediately, the reply came. Faster than I expected, like he was waiting for me to ask. "Does it matter?" I stared at the message, unable to respond. The words felt like a punch to my stomach. The lack of answer. The absence of identity. It was like I was being pulled deeper into something I didn't understand. I set the phone down, the screen dimming as it went silent. But the silence was unbearable. I could still feel him, his presence, his eyes. I couldn't escape it. The weight of his gaze pressed on me, suffocating me from all sides. I turned the phone off, hoping it would stop the feeling, but it didn't. It never does. The fear never goes away. It only grows. The longer I wait, the longer I try to deny it, the worse it becomes. I walked to the window, pressing my face against the cool glass. The street below was empty, dark, just the occasional car passing by. There was no one out there. No one watching. No one to remind me that I wasn't just imagining it all. That this wasn't just paranoia. This was real. But then, a figure moved in the distance. It was just a shadow, a blur in the dark. Too far away to be certain, but I saw it. I saw it clearly. It was the same figure, the same shadow that I had seen over and over again. It was him. I jerked back from the window, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked around the room, my mind spinning, my thoughts scattered. How? How was he always there? How could he always find me, no matter what I did? No matter where I went? I didn't know anymore. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't escape. And then, from somewhere behind me, I heard it. The softest of whispers. So faint, it was almost like a breath. Hide. The words sent a chill through my body, my blood freezing in my veins. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to go. I had to leave. But where would I go? I don't know how long I stood there by the window, just staring out at the empty street below, my heart pounding in my chest. Every time I blinked, every time I exhaled, I expected to see him standing there, just beyond the glass, waiting, watching. But nothing. Just the usual quiet, the stillness of a city at night. It's funny, isn't it? How you can be surrounded by so much silence and still feel like you're drowning. The silence was louder than any sound. It was suffocating, crushing, and it only made the weight of my fear more palpable, more real. I couldn't stay here anymore. I couldn't stand the constant tension, the anxiety that gnawed at my insides every time I turned a corner, every time I stepped into a room. The feeling that someone was always there, just behind me, always watching, always waiting for the right moment to strike. I needed to leave. I needed to get away. But where would I go? The question echoed in my mind, looping over and over. There was no escape. He would find me. He always did. The apartment felt smaller now. The walls seemed to close in on me, the air thick with the sense of something, someone, watching from the shadows. I tried to take deep breaths, but my chest felt tight, constricted. My mind raced, bouncing from one thought to the next, and I couldn't make sense of any of it. What did he want? What was he waiting for? I glanced at the phone on the table, still turned off, still holding that haunting message. I'm still here. It felt like it was burned into my mind, those words, like some kind of curse. The idea that someone could be so close, yet so far, so invisible, was maddening. It was like I was caught in some twisted game, a game where I didn't even know the rules. I tried to ignore it. I tried to focus on something else, anything else, but my mind wouldn't let me. It kept pulling me back to him, to the presence that never left, to the feeling that he was always one step ahead, always waiting for me to slip up. I could feel him even now, lurking in the corners of my vision, waiting for me to make a mistake. His eyes, cold and unfeeling, piercing through the dark, always watching. I had to do something. I had to confront this. I couldn't keep running from it, couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. But how? How could I face something so terrifying, something that defied all logic and reason? I decided to go out. To leave the apartment, even if it was just for a little while. Maybe the air would clear, maybe the streets would offer me a moment of peace, a break from the constant pressure building inside my chest. Maybe I could get my bearings, maybe I could think straight for once. I grabbed my jacket, my hands still shaking, and stepped out into the hallway. The building felt empty. Quiet. Dead. There were no footsteps, no voices, no sounds at all. Just the faint hum of the overhead lights, the occasional creak of the floorboards. But I felt it. That same oppressive feeling, that same heavy weight, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to move. I just needed to get out of that apartment, out of that space where I could feel him watching me, waiting for me to slip up. The elevator doors closed with a soft ding, and I descended into the lobby. The door to the building opened with a faint squeak, and I stepped out onto the street. The cool night air hit me, sharp and refreshing, but it didn't chase away the fear. It didn't calm the unease that gnawed at my insides. It only made it worse, like the outside world was just as empty and silent as the apartment I had just left behind. I started walking, my footsteps quick and uneven, the sound of them echoing too loudly in the silence. I could feel my pulse in my throat, could feel the blood rushing to my ears. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch far beyond where they should have. I kept my eyes straight ahead, not daring to look around, afraid of what I might see in the darkness. I didn't know how far I'd walked when I realized something. The feeling hadn't gone away. It hadn't changed. It was still there, just under the surface, lurking, watching. I couldn't shake it. No matter how far I went, no matter how fast I moved, he was still there. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, my heart hammering in my chest. I looked around, trying to find the source of the feeling, trying to pinpoint where it was coming from. But there was nothing. Just the empty street, the occasional car passing by, the faint hum of the city in the distance. And then I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible sound. The sound of footsteps behind me. My blood ran cold. I spun around, but there was no one there. The street was empty. The sidewalks were empty. The world around me was still, quiet, as if nothing had moved for hours. But the footsteps were still there, faint and rhythmic, coming closer. I turned and walked faster, my breath coming in short, ragged bursts. I could feel it now, the pressure, the heat, the sense of something, someone, closing in on me. The footsteps echoed in my mind, louder now, faster, as if they were chasing me. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. My mind was a blur of panic and fear, and every step I took felt heavier than the last. The darkness around me seemed to shift, to stretch, to twist into something wrong. The world didn't feel real anymore. It felt like I was trapped in some nightmare, one that I couldn't wake up from. I had to keep moving. I couldn't stop. I couldn't let him catch me. I looked over my shoulder again, and there he was. Not far behind me, but close enough that I could see him clearly now. His figure was tall, looming, his face hidden in shadow, his eyes gleaming with something I couldn't quite name. He was there. He was real. And he was coming for me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My body was frozen, caught in some kind of twisted paralysis, my legs refusing to carry me forward, my mind screaming for me to run, but my feet stayed glued to the concrete as though some invisible force had taken hold of me. I didn't want to turn around, but I had no choice. The sound of those footsteps, slow and deliberate, were too close now. Too familiar. I turned, but my eyes couldn't focus, couldn't process what was in front of me. The figure was taller than I remembered, impossibly tall, stretching upward as if the darkness itself was pulling him into the air. His face was still hidden in shadow, but I could feel his eyes on me. Cold, unwavering, as if he were waiting for me to acknowledge him, waiting for me to make the first move. My mind raced. What did he want? What was this? Was it even real? Was I losing my grip on reality? Had I fallen so far that I could no longer trust my senses? The footsteps stopped. The silence felt worse than the sound. My heart pounded in my chest, my pulse ringing in my ears like a drumbeat. He was standing there, in the middle of the street, as though he belonged to the darkness itself, an entity that was more shadow than man. The chill in the air had thickened, the world around me seemed quieter, heavier, as if the very air had stopped moving. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, to beg, to do anything to break this suffocating silence, but my voice was trapped inside me. My legs shook beneath me, and yet I couldn't make them move. I was paralyzed, rooted to the spot. Why are you doing this? My voice sounded foreign to me, hoarse, weak. I didn't even know if I was speaking out loud. It felt like the words were coming from someone else's mouth, someone far away. But I had to ask. I had to know. The figure didn't respond. Of course, he didn't. He didn't need to. His presence was more than enough. His gaze, even from beneath the shadow of his hood, pierced through me like a knife. And the worst part? I could feel it. I could feel the weight of his attention, like his stare was inside my very skin, burrowing into my thoughts. The air around me grew colder still. A breeze picked up, sharp and biting, swirling the fallen leaves into frenzied little whirlwinds. But the wind didn't touch the figure. He stood perfectly still, like the world itself bent around him, an immovable object in the center of a universe in chaos. Then, in the oppressive silence, I heard it. A soft whisper, so faint that I almost missed it. Run. I didn't know if it was my mind breaking or if it had come from him, but the voice, it sent a tremor through me. The words were a command, not a suggestion. They felt like a warning, a threat wrapped in the shroud of something more sinister. And suddenly, my body responded. My legs, shaking and unsteady, moved before my mind had fully caught up. I turned and bolted down the street, my feet pounding against the pavement, my heart hammering in my chest like it might burst at any moment. I couldn't look back. I didn't dare look back. I ran, but every step felt like I was moving through molasses, the weight of the fear slowing me down, pulling at my limbs. The street stretched before me like an endless maze, and no matter how far I ran, no matter how hard I pushed myself, the feeling didn't go away. He was still there, behind me. I could feel it. His presence was like a constant shadow, hanging over me, pushing me faster, harder. The lights of the street seemed to flicker as I ran, the shadows stretching unnaturally long, as if the world around me was warping, distorting. I could feel the temperature dropping, the cold seeping into my skin, my bones. Every sound seemed to echo, growing louder, more distorted. The street, the buildings, the trees, they all felt wrong. Like they were twisting, changing before my very eyes. I rounded a corner, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps, but when I looked ahead, I froze. The street was empty. No more footsteps. No more figure. Nothing but the cold, silent street stretching out in front of me. But the silence was worse than the noise. The absence of anything, of anyone, felt like a void I couldn't escape. It was like I was the only person left in the world, the only one who could feel the weight of that darkness pressing in. I stood there, panting, trying to calm my racing heart, but I couldn't. The fear still clung to me like a second skin. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know if I was even safe. It felt like the whole world had turned against me, like I was being swallowed by some endless black hole, drawn in and consumed by something I couldn't even comprehend. I started walking again, cautiously, my senses on high alert. The air was still thick, too thick, and every sound, every movement, felt amplified. I felt like I was moving through a dream, one that I couldn't wake up from, a nightmare that was too real. Then, I saw something. A figure standing in the distance. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks, but no. It was him. The same figure, standing motionless in the middle of the street, waiting. Watching. He had found me again. I didn't stop. I couldn't. My legs carried me forward, faster now, my footsteps no longer echoing on the pavement. I was moving without thinking, without knowing where I was going. I just needed to get away. I needed to outrun him. But no matter how fast I ran, no matter how far I pushed myself, the figure was always there, lurking just beyond my vision, like a shadow that refused to fade. And I knew, deep down, that I couldn't escape him. Not now. Not ever. Have you ever felt like someone was watching you? The question hung in the air, thick with tension. I stood alone in my small apartment, the dim light casting long shadows across the walls. My heart raced, and an unsettling feeling crept up my spine. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the chill that ran through me. My name is Alex, and I live in a city that never sleeps. But tonight, the familiar sounds of traffic and laughter felt distant, almost muffled. I had been struggling with my own demons for years, traumas buried deep in my mind, memories I tried to forget. But sometimes, it felt like they were just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to resurface. It was a quiet evening, too quiet. I settled into the worn-out couch, the fabric scratching against my skin. I tried to focus on the book in my hands, but the words blurred. Instead, I listened. The clock ticked steadily, each second echoing in the stillness. But then, there was a soft rustle from the hallway outside my door. I held my breath. It sounded like footsteps, slow and deliberate. It's just my imagination, I thought, trying to convince myself. Yet, the air felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. The sound stopped. I strained my ears, but only silence returned. Then came the faintest scent, like damp earth mixed with something sweet and rotten. I frowned, glancing toward the window. It was closed. I had not opened it in days. Yet the smell lingered, growing stronger. My pulse quickened, each thump in my chest a reminder that I was alone. I rose from the couch, my legs trembling slightly. The hallway stretched out before me, dark and foreboding. I hesitated, debating whether to investigate or retreat back to the safety of my book. But curiosity gnawed at me, urging me forward. As I approached the door, I noticed a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye, a shadow darting across the wall. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. "It's nothing," I whispered to myself, but doubt clouded my mind. What if it was something? I reached for the doorknob, my hand trembling. A cold sweat trickled down my back. I twisted the knob slowly, peering into the dimly lit hallway. Nothing. Just this dark emptiness that echoed my own fear. But something felt off. The air was thick, almost electric. I took a cautious step forward, the floorboards creaking beneath my weight. The sound felt amplified, as if the building itself were holding its breath. Then came the unmistakable sound of a door creaking open behind me. I spun around, heart racing. My apartment was still, but that noise, someone, or something, was in the building with me. I gripped the doorframe, grounding myself. I needed to stay calm. "Just the wind," I muttered, but even I didn't believe it. Shadows danced along the walls, and I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were on me. Panic surged. I took a step back, retreating into the safety of my home. I wanted to lock the door, to shut out whatever was out there. But then, I heard it again, a whisper, soft and chilling, like a breeze slipping through the cracks. "Alex." The voice was familiar, haunting. My stomach dropped. It couldn't be. I pressed my back against the wall, feeling the coolness seep into my skin. Memories flooded my mind, uninvited and vivid. A face from my past, a friend turned enemy. I had thought I buried that chapter, but now it clawed its way back, relentless and cold. Get a grip, I scolded myself. But as the whisper echoed in the stillness, I felt the walls closing in. I was not alone. The darkness began to shift as if it were alive, and I knew I had to confront whatever lay in the shadows. Who's there? I called out, my voice shaking. Silence responded, heavy and suffocating. But I felt it, a presence, watching, waiting. And in that moment, the line between reality and my worst fears began to blur. I stood frozen, heart pounding, as the silence stretched on. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, to hide, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was waiting just out of sight. The whisper echoed in my mind, Alex. It felt like a ghost from my past, an echo of a time I thought I had left behind. I could almost picture the face that went with the voice, a smile that once brought me joy now twisted into something sinister. I took a shaky breath and stepped further into the hallway, the dim light flickering above me, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance along the walls. The hallway felt narrower than I remembered, the familiar space now warped by fear. Each creak of the floorboards beneath my feet sounded like a warning. Is someone there? I called out again, trying to infuse my voice with authority, but it wavered. I felt exposed, vulnerable. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, every inch filled with the weight of dread. I glanced back at my apartment, the door standing ajar, as if beckoning me to return. But some primal instinct, compelled me to press forward. The air felt charged, thick with anticipation, and I could almost taste the tension on my tongue. The smell intensified, swirling around me, damp earth mixed with a hint of decay. My stomach churned as I fought the urge to gag. Where was it coming from? The walls began to close in, shadows morphing into sinister shapes that lurked just beyond my line of sight. With each step, the whispers grew louder, overlapping in a cacophony of distorted voices. Alex, come play, remember me? The words slithered through my mind, wrapping around my thoughts like a vine. Panic surged through me as I stumbled backward, nearly losing my balance. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to steady my racing heart. This isn't real, I told myself, repeating the mantra like a prayer. It can't be real. But doubt gnawed at the edges of my sanity. Then I saw it, a shadow shifting at the far end of the hallway. My breath caught in my throat. It was tall, elongated, almost human but wrong in every way. Its outline flickered in the dim light, merging and separating from the darkness as if it were part of it. Who are you? I managed to whisper, my voice barely a sound in the oppressive quiet. The figure hesitated, then moved closer, gliding rather than walking. It felt as if the air between us thickened, becoming a tangible barrier of fear. Don't you remember? The voice was like glass breaking, sharp and jarring. My heart raced as recognition flared. It was him. The friend I lost. The night everything changed. Suddenly, flashes of memory surged forth, laughter, a party, secrets shared, and then, the accident. My chest tightened. I had tried to forget the guilt, the blame I had carried like a heavy shroud. The loss consumed me, and now it had returned in this twisted form. I didn't mean to, I stammered, tears pricking in my eyes. But the figure only shook its head, a mournful look in its hollow eyes. Mean to what? To forget? It stepped closer, and I could feel the cold radiating from it, wrapping around me like a fog. You can't escape what you've done. I wanted to scream, to run back into the safety of my apartment, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The memories clawed at me, each one a reminder of my failure. I had thought I was free. Why now? I managed to croak out, voice trembling. Why are you here? Because you invited me. The figure's lips curled into a grotesque smile. You buried me, but I'm not gone. I'll never be gone. With that, the shadow lunged forward, and I was overwhelmed by a rush of memories, sights, sounds, and a terrible sense of loss. I stumbled back, hitting the wall hard, pain shooting through my body. The whispers transformed into screams, a chaotic symphony of regret and despair. You left me, they echoed. You abandoned me. I clamped my hands over my ears, desperate to drown out the noise. But it was too late. The shadows pressed in, closing around me, suffocating. As the darkness engulfed me, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I had to break free. I turned to flee down the hallway, the familiar space now a twisted maze. The figure pursued me, its laughter echoing like a haunting melody. I sprinted toward the stairs, each step feeling heavier as the whispers followed, wrapping around my thoughts. You can't escape, they taunted. I reached the stairwell and bolted down the steps, two at a time. With every turn, the shadows seemed to reach out, grasping at my ankles, trying to pull me back. I could feel the cold breath of the figure behind me, hot on my heels. I burst through the door to the ground floor, stumbling into the lobby. The bright lights felt blinding after the darkness, but the safety of the open space was a fleeting comfort. I spun around, scanning the empty lobby, half expecting to see him standing there. But there was nothing. Just silence. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath, my heart hammering in my chest. Had it all been a nightmare? Or was I losing my grip on reality? I glanced back toward the staircase, feeling a tremor of fear grip me. What had I unleashed? The smell still lingered, heavy and suffocating, and deep down, I knew this was far from over. Something had returned, and I would have to confront the truth of my past, whether I wanted to or not. I stood in the lobby, breathless and disoriented, every nerve in my body screaming to flee. The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sharp shadows that flickered with every passing moment. My heart raced as I tried to catch my breath, but the echoes of those haunting whispers clung to me, refusing to fade. I felt like a cornered animal, every instinct telling me to run. The air was thick, almost suffocating, with the scent of decay still lingering. It coiled around me, wrapping tighter as if it were a living entity. I shook my head, desperate to clear the fog of fear that clouded my thoughts. Get a grip, Alex, I muttered under my breath, but the words felt hollow. I could still feel the chill of the shadow pressing against me, the weight of guilt heavier than ever. I glanced back toward the stairwell, half expecting the figure to emerge, its twisted form illuminated in the harsh light. But there was nothing, just the emptiness of the lobby. I took a hesitant step forward, my eyes darting to the glass doors leading outside. Daylight spilled into the lobby, promising safety, but I hesitated. What if I stepped into something worse? What if whatever had haunted me in that hallway followed me into the world beyond? I turned, glancing around the empty lobby. The usual bustle of people was conspicuously absent. It felt like the calm before a storm, the silence deafening in its intensity. I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, but it felt distant, muted. Think, I whispered to myself. What would you do? I needed to understand what was happening. This wasn't just a figment of my imagination, it was something real, something tied to my past. I pulled out my phone, its screen glowing brightly in my trembling hands. I needed to contact someone, anyone who could help me piece together what was happening. I scrolled through my contacts, but the names blurred together. Who would believe me? Who could I trust? Just then, a sudden noise broke the silence, a soft thud from the staircase. My heart leaped into my throat as I turned, eyes wide. The sound came again, followed by the unmistakable creaking of footsteps. Panic surged within me. I darted toward the exit, but the door wouldn't budge. I pressed against it, pulling with all my might, but it felt as if it were glued shut. No! Let me out! I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. The footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously in the quiet lobby. My breath quickened as I turned back to the staircase, dread pooling in my stomach. Alex, the voice slithered down the steps, silky and chilling. It was him. The shadow. It was coming for me. I frantically searched for an escape, my eyes scanning the room. The reception desk stood nearby, an oasis of hope. I dashed toward it, desperate to find something, anything, that could protect me. My mind raced with thoughts of self-defense, but all I found was an old stapler and a heavy paperweight. The footsteps grew closer, each sound like a drumbeat of impending doom. I grabbed the paperweight, clutching it tightly in my sweaty palm, ready to fight if it came to that. I pressed my back against the desk, breathing heavily, every instinct screaming at me to hide. Then, the figure appeared at the top of the stairs. It stood shrouded in darkness, a silhouette against the bright lights. My breath hitched as it began to descend, each step deliberate and unnerving. "Why are you running?" it taunted, voice echoing off the walls. "You can't escape me. I'm part of you now." I felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. "You're not real. You can't be." I shouted, voice trembling. "You're just a memory." But the figure merely laughed, a sound that sent chills racing down my spine. "A memory? No, Alex. I'm your past. I'm the weight you carry, the guilt you can't shed." As it reached the bottom of the stairs, I felt my resolve waver. I was trapped. The lobby, once a place of safety, had morphed into a cage. I had to face this thing, this embodiment of my fears. "Leave me alone," I screamed, brandishing the paperweight like a weapon. It was pathetic, but it was all I had. "Alone?" The figure tilted its head, the shadows shifting around it, revealing glimpses of a face I once knew, once loved. "You've always been alone, Alex. You pushed me away, and now I'm here to remind you." A flood of memories rushed over me, moments of laughter, camaraderie, the warmth of friendship, and then the darkness of that fateful night. I had tried to forget, but now it felt like I was being swallowed by it. "I didn't push you away," I cried, tears streaming down my face. "It was an accident. I didn't want this." The figure stepped closer, and I could see its features more clearly now, twisted and broken, a grotesque reminder of the loss I had buried deep within. "You did want this, Alex. You wanted to forget. But you can't." In that moment, the weight of my guilt came crashing down, and I realized that running wouldn't save me. I had to confront it, to face the truth I had avoided for so long. With a shaky breath, I took a step forward, lowering the paperweight. "What do you want from me?" The figure paused, its expression shifting from malice to something softer, almost sorrowful. "I want you to remember, to acknowledge the pain. Only then can you truly let me go." I felt a pang of understanding. This wasn't just a monster, it was a part of me, fragment of my past that I had tried to erase. The realization was terrifying, but also liberating. "I can't change what happened," I whispered, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I can face it." The figure nodded slowly, the shadows around it beginning to dissipate. "Then let's remember together." As I stood there, staring into the depths of my own guilt, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe confronting my past wouldn't mean losing myself entirely. Maybe it could be the first step toward healing. And in that moment, the whispers faded, replaced by a quiet understanding. The figure before me, though still a reminder of my pain, also represented the possibility of redemption. I could choose to break free from the chains of my past. But I knew the journey wouldn't be easy. The shadows would always linger, waiting for a moment of weakness. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead, determined to find my way back to the light. The air in the lobby felt charged, as if a storm was brewing just out of sight. I stood there, staring at the figure before me, a strange mix of fear and determination swirling in my chest. The grotesque visage, once so familiar, now seemed less like a monster and more like a reflection of my own despair. "Let's remember together," it said again, its voice softer now, almost pleading. I took a tentative step closer, heart pounding in my chest. "What do you want me to remember?" "Everything," it whispered, the shadows around it shifting like smoke. "You have to confront the truth, no matter how painful it is." The lobby around us faded into the background as memories flooded my mind, unbidden and relentless. I could almost hear the laughter of friends, feel the warmth of their presence. But then came the chilling recollections of that night, the fear, the chaos, the accident that had changed everything. I shut my eyes tightly, trying to push the memories away, but they clawed at me, desperate to resurface. "No! I can't go back there!" I shouted, panic rising. "Why not?" The figure took a step closer, its hollow eyes searching mine. "You've been running for too long. You need to face what you fear most." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat choking me. "Because it hurts. Because I lost everything." "Exactly. You lost everything because you chose to forget. But forgetting doesn't erase the pain, it only makes it worse." Its voice was steady, firm, and I felt an uncomfortable truth settling over me like a heavy cloak. I could feel the weight of guilt pressing down on my shoulders, suffocating. "What if I can't handle it?" I asked, voice trembling. "Then you won't heal. You'll stay trapped in this cycle of fear and regret," it replied, and for the first time, I noticed a flicker of empathy in its expression. "But you're stronger than you think. You've survived this long, haven't you?" I opened my eyes, looking deep into the figure's face. It was a mirror of my own pain, a representation of everything I had tried to escape. But now, I felt a strange sense of connection. This was not just a monster, this was a part of my past that I had neglected for too long. "Okay," I said, my voice steadying. "Let's remember. But I need to know what really happened." The figure nodded, and suddenly the lobby began to shift and swirl around us, the walls blurring as if they were made of smoke. I felt a rush of vertigo, and then we were standing in a dimly lit room, the faint sound of music pulsing in the background. The atmosphere was vibrant, filled with laughter and conversation. I could see flashes of my friends, faces illuminated by the warm glow of string lights. It was a party, one I had nearly forgotten, buried beneath layers of guilt. "There, that night," the figure said, gesturing toward the scene. "Do you remember?" I felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with dread. "Yes, I remember. We were so happy. We didn't think. My voice trailed off, the memory too vivid. I could see myself, carefree and laughing, surrounded by friends. But then, the music shifted, the laughter fading into something darker. I saw the figure's face change, anxiety creeping in as the scene unfolded. And then came the accident, it said softly. I watched helplessly as the memory played out, how the atmosphere had shifted, the laughter turning into chaos as someone suggested a game, a dare that spiraled out of control. I remembered the feeling of exhilaration, then the sudden rush of panic as everything went wrong. No! Stop! I shouted, but the scene continued as if I had no power to change it. I saw the moment of impact, the sickening realization of what had happened, the chaos that ensued. My heart raced as I relived the moment, the cries, the confusion, the overwhelming sense of helplessness. I felt tears streaming down my face, but I couldn't look away. I had to see it through, to confront the truth. This is where it started, the figure said, its voice barely a whisper. You tried to shield yourself from the pain, but that only allowed it to fester. You have to acknowledge it. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as the memory played out, the weight of regret crashing down. I could see the faces of my friends, their fear and anger directed at me. I had tried to take charge, to lead, but it had all gone horribly wrong. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, I sobbed, feeling the walls of the memory closing in around me. I never wanted this. I know, the figure said gently, stepping closer. But you need to forgive yourself. You can't carry this burden forever. I closed my eyes, letting the tears flow freely. How? How do I do that? By accepting that it happened. By understanding that pain is a part of life, but it doesn't define you. You are more than your mistakes. The memory began to shift again, morphing into a different scene. I found myself in a quiet room, sitting with my friends, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken words. We were trying to process what had happened, the silence thick with tension. I felt so alone, I confessed, my voice shaking. Everyone was angry with me, and I didn't know how to fix it. The figure nodded, its expression softening. You pushed them away. You thought isolation would protect you, but it only made the pain worse. I felt a surge of understanding. I was scared, I admitted. I thought if I just hid, it would all go away. And it didn't. It never does. The figure's voice was soothing, like a balm to my wounded spirit. You can't run from your past, Alex. You have to face it head on. As the memories swirled around us, I felt a shift within myself. The fear that had once paralyzed me began to dissolve, replaced by a sense of acceptance. I had made mistakes, yes, but I was not defined by them. I looked at the figure, no longer a monstrous shadow, but a part of my journey. I'm ready to let go, I said, my voice steadier now. Then let's move forward together, it replied, the shadows around it beginning to fade. As the memories slowly ebbed away, I felt a lightness in my chest. I had confronted the darkness, and in doing so, I found a flicker of hope. I knew the road ahead would be long, but for the first time in years, I felt the possibility of healing. And as I stepped away from the painful memories, I felt the sun breaking through the clouds, illuminating the path before me. It was time to reclaim my life. The remnants of the memories swirled around me, dissipating like mist under the morning sun. I felt lighter, the crushing weight of guilt and regret beginning to lift as I stood in that dimly lit room. The figure, once a harbinger of my darkest fears, had transformed into a reminder of my past, a guide urging me toward healing. "Are you ready to step back into the light?" it asked, its voice soft yet firm. I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs, cool and invigorating. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "I want to move forward." With that declaration, the room began to shift again, the walls fading away and the atmosphere brightening. I felt a rush of energy, a sense of renewal washing over me as the shadows receded. Suddenly, I found myself standing in a familiar space, the lobby of my apartment building, but this time it felt different. The oppressive heaviness was gone, replaced by a sense of clarity and purpose. I glanced around, the sunlight streaming through the glass doors, illuminating the once dark corners. The familiar hum of the city filled my ears, a symphony of life and movement that made my heart swell. I was back, but I was no longer the same person. "What now?" I asked, turning to the figure, which stood a few paces behind me. "Now you face the world as you truly are," it replied, a hint of pride in its voice. "You've confronted your past. It's time to reclaim your future." I felt a surge of courage. It was time to reach out to those I had pushed away, to rebuild the connections I had neglected. I needed to show them that I was ready to be part of their lives again. I pulled out my phone, hesitating for just a moment before scrolling through my contacts. I found Sarah's name, the friend I had alienated the most. With a trembling finger, I pressed the call button, my heart racing as I brought the phone to my ear. It rang once, twice, and then I heard her voice, a mix of surprise and caution. "Alex? Is that you?" "Yes, it's me," I responded, swallowing hard. "I know it's been a long time, and I'm so sorry for everything. Can we talk?" There was a pause on the other end, the silence stretching painfully. "I don't know, Alex. It's been hard for all of us." "I understand," I interrupted, my voice urgent. "But I've been working on myself. I faced what happened, and I need to explain. Please, can we meet?" After another moment of hesitation, Sarah sighed. "All right. How about the cafe down the street in an hour?" "Yes." "I'll be there," I said, relief flooding through me as I ended the call. The weight of my past felt a little lighter, replaced by the hope of rebuilding. I took a moment to gather myself, breathing deeply as I stepped out into the sunlight. The warmth enveloped me, a stark contrast to the cold shadows I had been trapped in for so long. The streets bustled with life, people hurrying by, their faces animated and filled with purpose. I felt a rush of gratitude for this vibrancy, a reminder that life continued beyond my struggles. As I walked toward the cafe, I took in the sights and sounds around me, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air, the laughter of children playing nearby, and the distant hum of traffic. Each step felt significant, a movement toward reclaiming my identity. Arriving at the cafe, I spotted Sarah sitting at a corner table, her posture tense and her gaze fixed on the door. My heart raced as I approached, a mix of anxiety and anticipation swirling within me. "Hey," I said softly as I reached her table, her eyes meeting mine. "Hi, Alex," she replied, her voice cautious but not unkind. "It's been a while." "I know," I said, taking a seat across from her. "And I'm so sorry for everything that happened. I can't express how much I regret pushing you all away." She looked down, tracing the rim of her coffee cup with her finger. "It was hard for us, Alex. We felt lost after everything. You shut us out." I was scared, I admitted, the words spilling out before I could filter them. I thought if I isolated myself, I wouldn't hurt anyone else. But in reality, I just hurt myself and you. Sarah looked up, her expression softening. We all wanted to help you. We missed you. I know that now, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. I faced the darkness I was hiding from. I remembered everything, and it's painful, but I need you to know I'm ready to be part of the world again. I don't want to run anymore. She studied me for a long moment, the silence heavy with unspoken words. Finally, she nodded slowly. It's going to take time, Alex. Trust isn't easy to rebuild. I understand, I replied, my heart aching. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I don't expect everything to be okay right away, but I want to try. The corners of her lips curled into a small smile. That's a start. I appreciate you reaching out. We talked for hours, sharing memories, laughter, and the weight of the past. I listened intently as she recounted her feelings during my absence, her words a mixture of hurt and hope. Each moment felt like a brick being laid down, slowly rebuilding the bridge I had burned. As the cafe began to empty, I felt a sense of warmth blossom within me. I realized that confronting my past wasn't just about facing my own demons, it was also about rebuilding the relationships that had suffered in silence. Thank you for meeting with me, Sarah, I said, my voice earnest. It means more than you know. Just take it one step at a time, she replied, her smile genuine. We'll figure this out together. As we stood to leave, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The shadows of my past were still there, but they no longer held the power to define my present. I had taken the first step toward healing, and with each connection I rebuilt, I felt the light of hope illuminating my path forward. And as I stepped back out into the sunlight, I knew that I was ready to embrace whatever came next, unafraid of the past, and filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Hope your dreams are filled with fear. Good night.